Good morning. I'm Charles Haskell, your worship associate for today. Later this morning, the Reverend Kikanza Nuri-Robins will preach a sermon asking the question, how do you describe your faith? Is it enough to say I'm a UU, or do you need to specify the kind of UU you are? When my late wife Christine and I joined this church in 1979, we took a class called BYOT, or Build Your Own Theology. Our minister then was the late Reverend Ernie Pipes, and one of the first exercises that we were asked to do was to rewrite the Ten Commandments. I don't remember what I decided to write at that time, but I feel this may be a good time for me to revisit that question. The commandments, briefly stated from Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. First, I am the Lord your God. 2, thou shalt have no other gods before me. 3, do not misuse God's name. 4, remember the Sabbath. And then it goes on, honor your father and mother, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, and do not covet thy neighbor's wife or his servant or whatever. The first commandment deals with God and his or her worship. I'll let Kikanza deal with this one. I'd replace the second commandment with something like, thou shalt honor and follow the 7 principles and adhere to our covenant. I'd replace the third commandment with something like, thou shalt honor and use the scientific method in our pursuit of truth. I'd replace the fourth commandment with a statement that we are a religious community and that being in fellowship is how we honor the Sabbath. I have no quarrel with commandments 5 through 10. They strike me as reasonable guidelines to civilized behavior. They aren't sufficient guidance, but they are worth heeding. Rewriting the 10 Commandments is an interesting exercise in examining core values and behaviors. How would you rewrite them? Come, let us worship together.
It is such a thrill to see people in the pews. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so glad I am so glad to have you here. And I heard myself saying several times already this morning, I'm so glad to see you. Just really, really happy to see you, and glad that you have survived and that you are well, or reasonably well enough to show up here, and that we can move forward together. So there are some who still find it unsafe to come out. There are some who have not completed this journey with us and who have left us. There are some who are traveling in other directions. So as we look around in the pews at the empty spaces, let us remember those who sat there. Let us imagine those who will be sitting there. And let us hold in the light as we light the chalice, our love and blessings for all who would enter this sanctuary.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica. I'm Charles Haskell, your worship associate for today. We're delighted to have you present with us in the sanctuary and for all of you who have come to connect with us in our online sanctuary. Wherever you are today, from communities across the LA basin and around the United States and beyond, we are glad you are here. If you're new to our community, please know that while our building is still in the process of reopening for larger church services and events, we are still here meeting frequently online, and there are many ways to learn more about our church. We offer programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, including broad religious education and personal development for people of all ages. We also join with other social justice advocates in community activism that contributes to the justice and harmony of our world. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma. It is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder of existence and believe that we are all connected to each other and to the interdependent web of life. Our beliefs are drawn from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient tradition. We are an open, affirming, and welcoming congregation, diverse in backgrounds, identities, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are also a dedicated peace site. We are united in our desire to create an inclusive, beloved community, to live the principles of our faith, and to serve the wider world. An important step on that journey is our acknowledgement that our church and the homes of most of our members are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Tongva people, who continue to live here and who have cared for these lands for thousands of years. We recognize and mourn the often deadly harm inflicted on the indigenous peoples of this country. We lift up their grace, resilience, and their relationship with these sacred lands. Announcements. Once again, we are happy to announce that the Santa Monica Sanctuary is open again to members and friends for Sunday services, as you know, because you are here. And we ask you to be vaccinated and have a mask on when you come to church, but reservations are not required to attend Sunday services. It's great to see people here and to share time together after the service in our courtyard. No coffee or food will be served as yet, but there is plenty of conversation. Lunches for Bunches is happening again this Sunday and weekly from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Join us under the courtyard shade structure after the service as we prepare brown bag lunches for our homeless neighbors. We'll pack sandwiches, fruit, chips, beverages, and desserts for as many as we can. Afterward, we'll deliver them to Turning Point, a 55-bed temporary housing structure for homeless people in Santa Monica. Flowers on the Chancel. We are renewing our Chancel Flowers Ministry. If you are interested in organizing or bringing flowers for our Sunday service, contact Amy Brunel or Chayla Metzger. Other announcements can be found on our website, UUSM.org, where you can also subscribe to our online newsletter. Opening hymn. It's on 1003.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Whence do we come from? East to glory. Life is around us today.
Where
do we go?
are we? Life is around us. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Mystery, mystery, life is a mystery. Where do we go? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we?
Where do we come from? What are we?
Life is a riddle and a mystery.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Please join us in reciting the covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, thus do we covenant with each other. And then the hymn of praise.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing the hymn.
It's time for all ages. When I was 12, I went to summer camp near Idlewild, and it was a church camp, and they tried to instill good values during that time. At any rate, at the very first campfire we had, the counselors came up and said, "We are going to offer a reward for those of you we single out as being particularly good. The award is called the Namert pin, which is true man spelled backwards." Anyway, I heard that and I said, I want that pin. And I really tried hard. I did extra dishwashing. I tried everything I could think of to make myself clear to the counselors that I was worthy of the Namert pin. And every night somebody else got it. And I just couldn't figure out what it was going to take. Well, the next day, I was taking my plate from the table back to the kitchen to be washed, and I dropped it. And I was terribly unhappy because I'd shattered this plate. I collected all the shards, and I went to the counselor, and I said, "I'm sorry, I broke the plate. Can I pay for it?" And they said, no problem. Well, the next night, lo and behold, I was chosen as the Namert for having been honest and sharing the fact that I had broken this plate. And after all this time, when I'd been trying to get it, I got the award without thinking about it. The moral of this story, and you can draw many morals, I'm sure, but the moral I drew was, it pays to be good.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our Song of Blessing, which is hymn 193. And we are singing the first 3 verses.
On March 27th, 2020, we lost one of our own. Joanne Brownlee, the mother of our president, Beth, died. And so in honor of Joanne Brownlee today, Beth and her family have brought flowers, live flowers, for the chancel. And I invite you to bring them up. And there's Ian. Look at how he's grown. Where would you like to put them? We can move these. Okay, now I have a good view of them. Is that the view you want the congregation to see? Okay, cool. Thank you. So as we continue to reflect on our joys and sorrows, a joy to see you all here, to have the ushers here and the greeters here. And the musicians inside. It is a joy. Norm Ritchie had surgery recently, and he is healing and grateful for the great success of the surgery and for all of your prayers and blessings and thoughts as he and Bev prepared for and are now recovering. Karen Patch and Allie Harity are moving to Oregon, or probably have moved to Oregon, and they write to us that while it is a joy to move to our beautiful property near Eugene, it is also a sorrow to say goodbye to our UUSM community. We will miss you all very much. Thank you all for your love and support over the last 30 years. And so we remember them. We also remember this morning our minister, Reverend Jeremiah, and his partner Clinton, who are traveling to attend the memorial services for Clinton's grandmother who died recently. And so we hold them in our hearts and prayers. And so I invite you to join me in the silence as we contemplate the many joys and sorrows in our lives. And oftentimes the joys come with sorrow. The joys are bittersweet. The sorrows come with memories that bring laughter and smiles. It is all a mishmash of life. And so we remind ourselves to be mindful of those things for which we are grateful, to be mindful of those things we have lost, to be mindful of those around us who are grieving loss, to be mindful of celebrations. I'm looking in this direction and I am remembering that we have a new great-grandmother amidst us. Barbara's first great-grandchild was delivered this morning at 5 a.m. So we are mindful for new life. We are mindful for those who are at the threshold, waiting to be born, waiting to die, wondering what's next, wondering if it's safe to move forward. We are mindful for the many, many caregivers who watch and mourn as their loved ones leave them one tiny bit at a time. We are mindful for those who are still looking for work. We are mindful for those who are stuck in jobs that they can't believe they're being punished with. We are mindful of those who have work and are counting the days to retirement. We are mindful of those who are turning the chapters in their life and looking forward to what's next. We are mindful of those who have the resources to live comfortably without work and to dedicate their lives and their energies to raising money and funds and services and social action and to help those who don't quite have as much. We are mindful of our world leaders, of those in world leadership positions who are not demonstrating the kind of leadership that we certainly expect. We are mindful of those who are suffering because of poor leadership, poor judgment around the world. So we lift up our thoughts, we lift up our prayers, we lift up all of those things for which we are mindful, holding them with this combined energy in our silence. Our reading this morning is from Rainer Maria Rilke. He's writing to to a protege, someone he has been mentoring. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't answer the questions, which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live with them. The point is to live everything. Live the questions now. So Charles asked you to consider, how would you describe your faith? Is it enough to say you're a UU, I'm a UU? Or do you need to specify, well, I'm a Jew UU, I'm a Boo UU, I'm a lapsed Christian, I'm a former Catholic, I'm in a mixed family, and so this is the only place we could all agree to be here. One family said, we're here because our daughter loves the tree out in the yard. So what is it that informs your appreciation of Unitarian Universalism? During this season of polemic speech in our country, it becomes harder to share what you believe about anything without becoming defensive or feeling you need to justify your position. You do not have to justify being yourself. You don't have to make excuses for what you believe. You believe what you believe, but you don't have to try to convert the world to what you believe. That, I think, is the hardest thing. This morning, I want us to think about how a person can talk about this mystery that some people call God and some people call the energy that shapes our beliefs in ways that are inclusive, calling people in to share their ideas rather than calling them out or pushing them away because their ideas are different from yours. As an itinerant minister, which is what I am, it's been interesting to see the positions that various churches take about using inclusive language when talking about faith. Now, liberal Christians squabble about God's pronouns. Once I was challenged for using the pronoun it in reference, as in the mystery we call God, it, blah, 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 blah. And somebody ran up to the mic and said, God is not an it. Okay, language has its limitations. Now, conservatives know that God is an old white man, so it is always Father God. Moderate Christians will engage in conversation about the difference between God the Father, God the Savior, and Jesus Christ, and I never did understand the Trinitarian beliefs of a monotheistic faith. Other religions talk about one God by name, and most of the time it is a male persona. Theists in general define others by what they believe. So you are either a believer, one of us, or among the many unwashed. They challenge atheists to prove the validity of their disbelief in something they never said they believed in to begin with. So those whose beliefs and faith don't need a divine entity. What? You don't need a God? Of course you need a God. Some don't. Just leave it there. Call themselves humanists. They're not atheists, they're humanists. UUA humanist right. We are religious in that we share with most Unitarian Universalists the natural human desires for a beloved and accepting community, a purpose greater than ourselves, rituals and practices that resonate with our common humanity and shared mortality, opportunities to work with other tough-minded, warm-hearted people to do good in the world and to help one another attain the greatest possible fulfillment in life. 2 of the 6 primary sources of inspiration and wisdom in Unitarian Universalism are words and deeds of prophetic women and men, so that includes sacred texts, and then humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guide reason and the results of science. So all of those other books, all of those many other books that have wisdom for us. People will argue about pronouns, but few people wonder about whether it's God with a capital G or God with a lowercase g, or gods, like plural. I mean, there's more than one. There's usually an assumption that there is only one, and his name is God. What I find fascinating is that not many people know the name of the Judeo-Christian God. Their God's name is not God with a capital G. Monotheists believe there's only one, so calling the deity God works for them. It's like calling your partner wife or husband as a proper noun, or not naming your dog because there's only one in the whole universe, so you just call it dog in hushed tones. Dog. Judeo-Christian theologians know the names of their gods, they just don't use them. In Hebrew, the name of the Judeo-Christian God is Yahweh. The letters are JHWH, Yahweh. The word of this, and it's the source of the word Jehovah. In the Jewish tradition, mere mortals may not say the name of God because it is too holy. And when writing, one uses the characters G-D, or one of the many euphemisms like Adonai, my Lord. So if you are a reader of the Bible, you will notice that Lord is written in small caps throughout the Old and New Testaments, and that's because it is that's in English what it looks like. In Hebrew, it is Adonai, that's the word. And then there's El, which is another word for God, and Elohim, which is the plural of El, which raises some questions. And so while there are three big monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and their many offshoots, all say there's one God, yet other gods appear in their sacred texts, like Baal, the god from Canaan, Beelzebub, the god of the Philistines, Shamash, the god of the Moabites. Now we know the name Allah. Allah is the god of Islam and many of its offshoots. So Muslims and Baha'is have 99 praise names for Allah, for God, including beneficent, gracious, compassionate, forgiving, light, almighty, all-powerful, all-wise, incomparable, gracious, all-glorious, omniscient, and all-loving. The greatest of these 99 names is Yah Baha'u'llah, which is glory of glories. It's quite a lot. Romans, Greeks, Hindus are unrestrained in claiming their gods. Now, you may be familiar with their stories. Now, remember that they, whoever they are, have myths. We have sacred texts. But you will read about the gods of the Greeks and Romans in the Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Hindus, the Mahabharata. The gods have very human foibles and very great power for reward and revenge. And so it's satisfying to read about these gods who get angry and curse people and cut off their heads and damn their children for generations. It's an extension of who we are. Our gods live out the vast emotions that we feel a bit restrained in expressing. So, and the gods are organized. There's a god for love, and a god for war, and a god for peace, and a god for chaos, and on and on and on. God is a shorthand for describing intuition, unifying energy, the force of love, the ineffable source of all there is. Or, God is a very large parent, jealous, angry, protective, providing, who plays favorites. Or, as my sister said when she was very young, that God was like Santa Claus. I was describing to her why she needed to be good because Santa Claus was coming, and she says, well, is that God? Stopped me in my tracks. And then some people use God as a divine scapegoat. The idea of scapegoat is cloaked in language about divine will and God's plan. And let's see what God wants. It leaves the question, if God is all that, where is she when my life is such a mess? Now, Anne Lamott says that there are 3 kinds of prayers: wow, thanks, and help. And in my experience, help is the most common prayer. People pray, help me pass the test. Help me with this game. Help me win this love. Help me defeat my enemy. If helping you win means someone else loses, why would God only support your team? What about those others? Does God really take sides? Now, most theists agree that God is the source of all creation. Now, as an anthropologist, I understand that. I understand gods don't create people. People create gods to answer questions that otherwise have no answers. From a believer's perspective, the answers are in the sacred text, Kikanza, just read them. From an outsider's perspective, those people use their myths to explain the whys and hows of life. The universe is vast. The questions are numerous, and only a pantheon could handle all the problems of all the people. Why is there evil in the world? Why didn't God save us from these disasters, from that calamity? Why would a God want its creations to suffer? And the biggest mystery, why do we have to die? It is the ultimate punishment. If God created us and loves us, why would God let us die? More questions about afterlife, the good life, whether we're going to be able to live with God in the afterlife. So if we are God's people, if we are the chosen ones, what about the others? Where do they go? Why would a creator reject their creations? We develop stories to explain why God is imperfect in our eyes. God created us, but then we got too complicated, so God said, I'm going to go someplace else. At best, a disinterested God. Some say, we were just practice. Some say God is limitless. Our understanding of the mystery is limited. I found that with religion, it's important to reflect deeply, but you might get in trouble if you try to think too rationally or too logically when you're talking about God. The belief systems of our humanist friends don't need an omnipotent, omnipresent God. Why do you ask them about their belief without implied judgment that is off-putting, marginalizing, accusatory? So when we talk, to share, to listen, we don't say, do you believe in God? Or do you believe in a God? But rather, what are your beliefs about who we are and why we are here? Tell me about your spiritual path. How would you describe your religious beliefs? You want to ask to learn, not to argue or to convert. I have a young friend who is Jehovah's Witness, and I asked her, I said, do you get tired, do you get offended by all the jokes people make about Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on their doors and asking questions? And she says, no, we joke about it too. She says, we enjoy being challenged, but we don't like it when people try to argue with us and tell us that what we believe is wrong. We're willing to listen and to share, but we don't really want to argue. So I thought she says, we have to be that way. Otherwise, it would be really horrible to walk down your street and knock on your door. Makes a lot of sense. So if you talk with someone without trying to convert them to your point of view, or to ridicule their point of view, or to apologize for your point of view, if you call people in to have a conversation so that you can learn and reflect, so that you can see if your beliefs are strong enough to be challenged, that's what we want to do. That's what we do. That's what we strive to do as Unitarians. Our UU beliefs warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. including the idolatry of rightness. It is not an issue of you being right and everyone else being wrong. It is about you having a viewpoint that works for you and acknowledging the vast array of viewpoints that differ from yours. So you wouldn't start with, why don't you think there is a God? Why don't you believe in a God? Those are attack questions. You share. I'm curious. Help me understand. Tell me about what works for you. And even those of you who are theists, if you have the conversation, you'll learn that everybody doesn't think about it in the same way. And so you also you don't want to ask questions like, well, why is your God so violent? How can you believe in something with so many contradictions? Do you really believe that your God would allow, the RE curriculum, as Charles mentioned, includes a class where you can build your own creed, you can build your own theology, you can articulate your fundamental beliefs that inform and direct your life about creation and life and death and evil and afterlife and human nature and life rules. I recommend that you take it. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, Kikanza, what about you? I have always eluded that question by saying, well, my job is not to tell you what I believe. My job is to help you get clear about what you believe. But that's a weasel response. Most people assume that they know what I believe. For me, referring to God is an easy shorthand, and I function in a largely Christian environment, and so, they kind of expect it. It's a simple way to talk about things that I don't understand or I can never know, but it is a cop-out. Even saying the mystery called God is not enough to describe what I believe. I like the idea of a God. I collect gods and God icons. I like the Greeks and the Romans, and I have a personal pantheon from many traditions. So my favorite god in my personal pantheon is Carlotta, the goddess of parking. And then sitting next to my computer is Ganesh. You may pray to her. She responds. If you're sincere, you can't laugh though. Ganesh, the god who's usually lying on his side, he's got an elephant head and the body of a boy. And he's the remover of difficulties. And I sit him next to my computer. When the computer's not cooperating, I Ganesh, fix it. And he often does. Kuan Yin and Tara sit on my personal altars. Kuan Yin is the goddess of mercy and compassion. She's from China, and Tara is so powerful that she has many manifestations. There's black Tara and red Tara and white Tara and green Tara. She is the goddess of boundless compassion, protection, grace, and serenity, all of which to which I aspire. Now, someone gave me a Madonna once, a very lovely Madonna, and I asked, why? I'm not Catholic, and I'm barely what you think I am. And she said, well, I know you collect goddess icons, and she's the mother of God, so she must be a goddess. Yeah, I guess so. So I've got a laughing Buddha and a weeping Buddha who's been out for the last 2 years. I have an Aztec, Xochiquetzal, who is the goddess of beauty and erotic love and household arts. She must be a wife. And then in my studio is Aglaia, the goddess of beauty and adornment and splendor, who is the mother of welcome and grace. My personal pantheon is an interesting and entertaining response to my values and my internal contradictions. Our gods allow us to believe in miracles, to hope we are chosen, to abdicate responsibilities for ourselves, to hold onto the belief that someone else is going to fix this mess. So whether or not you claim a God, first clarify what you believe. Then find language for it, and most importantly, leave room for the expression of beliefs that differ from yours. Inclusion means talking about all of it, God the Mother and the Father, a world created by God, a scientific explanation for how the world came to be, an interesting mix of beliefs that don't answer all the questions, but that bring comfort. Rather than calling people out who marginalize or exclude your understanding of the world or ridiculing the apparent contradictions, let's celebrate the diversity. Let us rest in the ambiguity. Clarify your beliefs, because when your mind and your spirit are in alignment, you can walk steady. You can stand erect. You can take deep breaths, because this is what I believe. So what do you believe? Can you breathe on it? Can you stand tall with your beliefs? Can you rest easy into the questions? Can you live into the questions? Blessed be.
We come together for more than ourselves. This month, with our hearts with the people of Ukraine, we share 50% of our offering with the International Rescue Committee for their important work with Ukrainian refugees. As the IRC website notes, the International Rescue Committee, IRC, helps people affected by humanitarian crises, including the climate crisis, to survive, recover, and rebuild their lives. Founded at the call of Albert Einstein in 1933, the IRC is now at work in over 40 crisis-affected countries as well as communities throughout Europe and the Americas. Right now, the IRC provides crucial support for Ukrainian refugees. The IRC is demanding all those hurt by Russia's war against Ukrainian people be given refuge, no matter what their nationality or race. The International Rescue Committee directly assists countries accepting Ukrainian refugees with survival supplies. For example, Poland, which is preparing to care for 1 million refugees. There are many ways to give. Those of you in the sanctuary will be given an opportunity to give at this time. You may also give through our website, UUSM.org, by clicking the Make a Donation button, or by scanning the QR code on your screen if you're watching us by screening with your smartphone. Texting 844-982-0209 on your smartphone with the amount followed by the code GCC for a generous congregation contribution, or PLG, to make a contribution to your pledge. You can also make out a check to the church for any of these fundraising goals. Your generous contributions support the work and communities we all hold dear. Thank you.
for our closing hymn. We will be singing verses 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7.
Down the ages we have trod many paths in
So this service is over, and our service to the world continues. I'm going to be standing at this door to the courtyard to greet you. Charles is going to be standing for those of you who are trying to make a quick getaway out the front door. Remind you that we are not hugging or shaking hands, but we are sharing energy and delight in your presence here today. So as you go knowing that something calls us forward to be in community with one another. Something calls us forward to do good in the world. Something calls us inward to be clear about who and why you are. And whatever language you use to describe that something, remember that's what works for you. And it doesn't matter what language others use to describe what works for them. Let's make a space where we can share what we believe and not punish people because they don't believe what we believe. Go in peace, my friends.